What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. It is Tuesday once again, which means it's time to talk through our must-add waiver wire targets for Week 15 of the fantasy football season. Playoffs are underway, and it is time to get our teams together for the big dance. Now, as always, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. We will have 10 players, all under 50% owned on ESPN. Let's go.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gon' let me.
Now, I got to be honest, this is going to come out a little bit later in the day. We got held up in the morning. Because playoffs are happening right now, I have some sleeper leagues that are tournaments for Dynasty Redraft. Ended up taking some time to kind of get those leaderboards figured out in terms of just like what the playoff structure is, sort of rounding up all the playoff teams. It's a lot of accounting that goes on with those leagues. Regardless, though, we still have the waiver wire targets to get into today. A little bit late, but you guys probably put them in around nighttime anyway. So with that being said, our first must-add waiver wire target is Ty Chandler. He is the man of the hour. I will, by the way, say that this waiver wire week for a playoff week actually isn't terrible. Like, there are some players that you definitely want to go after, Ty Chandler being one of them, where if we look, we had a Ty Chandler injury. This is from 4 for 4. Shout out Jeff Mueller, I believe. He does these blurbs for them on their, I think the article is called The Training Room, but it's really good. It goes through what the injury is, how long they should be out. Alexander Madison, right ankle sprain. He said via video it appears that he may have suffered a right high ankle sprain, in which case could cost him several weeks. The best case scenario is that it is a mild case that he could play through in the next few weeks, but he is likely out in Week 15 if he misses time. Anticipate the Vikings leaning on Ty Chandler. So pretty much high ankle sprain. We're assuming 1 to 3 weeks, somewhere in that area, which is pretty much, the entirety of the fantasy playoffs, which is huge. On top of that, Ty Chandler after the Alexander Madison injury. Shout out Dave Richard for this tweet. But you had Ty Chandler, 83% of the snaps, 10 of the 13 third down and distance snaps. He's pretty much the workhorse back when Alexander Madison misses time. And what should be like a decent offense. I know it wasn't great this week versus the Raiders, but Kevin O'Connell usually has these guys humming. Nick Mullins is actually kind of exciting. So is Josh Dobbs, but Mullins is going to be playing this week. So a little bit of a change of scenery here in terms of their new quarterback. And if Ty Chandler's in the mix, he should be pretty much a plug-and-play RB2 for any game that Alexander Madison misses. Now, this one is a little bit less of a handcuff filling in for an injured running back. We have Foreman, who comes out here. I believe that he got hurt. Then they go on bye, and then he comes back. I'm not quite sure what the timeline is, but I believe that that's what it was. I think that he played, got hurt, bye week, came back this week. But regardless, Foreman, sort of out of nowhere, became the lead back this week. Or not became, I mean, he was. We just figured because he was hurt, he kind of lost that mantle. That is not the case at all. He comes out here with 11 carries, 50 yards. That's about fine. And he gets 2 catches for 22 yards. So nothing too crazy, but he did have 13 touches, and he had 56% of the snaps. He led the entire backfield. This is from the utilization report over on My Fantasy Life, and you can see snaps, rush attempt share, like pretty much everything besides the long down and distance snaps and the 2-minute drill snaps. He's not going to be your pass catcher, but he is going to be sort of your Gus Edwards light in this offense with Justin Fields at quarterback. It's just the ceiling is kind of low here. Like, he's not going to be the same plug-and-play free space guy as a Ty Chandler, but Foreman is going to be in like the RB30-ish range in a given week, just in terms of like putting him in your lineup. So in like hero RB builds, you could do a lot worse than having him at RB2. Now, another one of these handcuffs you're kind of hoping for, or not hoping for, but you get what I'm saying. You're kind of pulling for another running back to miss time is going to be Zamir White. He's like a size speed guy out of Georgia. Honestly, nothing all that special about Zamir White besides the potential opportunity he could get from Josh Jacobs. This is from Dr. Jesse Morris here, saying Josh Jacobs suffered a right knee hyperextension. No major concerns, could play Week 15, but the catch is that they play Thursday Night Football, the Raiders. So that's a tough turnaround time for Josh Jacobs. It seems like it's not a super, not devastating injury, but it's not a super big injury. It's not like a very concerning injury, but because it's such a close turnaround time, the season's kind of lost for the Raiders. I think Josh Jacobs is also playing on a very short-term deal here. Maybe he doesn't, risk it all to suit up here, but if he does miss this game, Zamir White is pretty much a free space RB2, but again, you're kind of taking a gamble that Jacobs misses any time here. So it's not really it's not a given that you can put Zamir White in your lineup. You're kind of rolling the dice here because you have to make these decisions on Tuesday night. Now, another one of these scenarios is going to be with your KC running backs. We talked about them yesterday. We talked about them on Saturday. They have been the men of the hour, Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, I've changed my tune a little bit here. I'm going to say if I had to prefer one of them, it would be Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me. And this is why. He had 15 opportunities to Jerick McKinnon 7. Now, we like Jerick McKinnon because he gets red zone touches and he gets receiving work. Well, the receiving work was split, where McKinnon had 3 targets to Clyde Edwards-Helaire's 4 targets. Now, of course, McKinnon ran more routes, but they both ran a sizable amount of routes, which is good for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Of course, McKinnon got the touchdown rush, but it seems like it really could have been either of them. So, to me, I would prefer Clyde Edwards-Helaire moving forward, but you really just need to keep an eye on what's going on with Pacheco. I think it's just good to have one of these guys stashed no matter sort of where your team is at, because you can either play them or Pacheco. He had a shoulder surgery heading into the year. This is that same shoulder. They have playoff hopes that they're playing for. They have championship hopes they're playing for. Not that he would get deactivated or anything, but they might sit him short term to preserve him for the playoffs. Like, that's absolutely in the range of outcomes that they're just like, okay, let's stop, re-injuring this guy. Like, there's outs here for one of these guys to maybe Pacheco returns this week, but then week 15, but then week 16, week 17, these KC running backs can go into the starting lineup. So just guys you should stash, guys with upside to play as soon as this week for you, all of that good stuff. Now, our next must-add waiver wire target is Chase Brown. Now, Chase Brown came onto the scene, absolutely went crazy. Gives me some Keaton Mitchell, some Devin Achane vibes, and he looks great. Now, he actually looks like one of these Chiefs running backs. He looks like Jerick McKinnon in a good way. Of course, Jerick McKinnon isn't, he's not a Hall of Fame running back or anything, but for a guy like Chase Brown, Illinois running back, day 3 draft pick, Jerick McKinnon is a great, ceiling outcome for your career here. But, 5'9", compact, 209 pounds. Jerick McKinnon is actually crazy. The fact that he could do 32 reps of 225 at 209 pounds is crazy. Chase Brown with 25 is also solid. Not that bench press really matters for running backs, but I just think it's a funny comp. But 4.4 speed, again, compact, 40-inch vertical, explosive, and that showed up on the field, which is always a good thing, where Chase Brown now holds the second fastest clocked ball carrier speed at 22.05 miles per hour. All really good stuff. Now, in terms of his role, this is from the Fantasy Life Utilization Report here, and you can see Chase Brown goes from 15% of the snaps in week 13 to 30% of the snaps in week 14. Now, the question is really when does it cap out, right? Where Joe Mixon, is Joe Mixon ever going to drop under 50% of the snaps? Is he ever even going to drop under 60%? We don't know, so it's kind of just upside here. He's a handcuff where if Mixon ever went down, Chase Brown would be a league winner, but he could also carve himself out some sort of like an Achane, Keaton Mitchell, somewhere on that spectrum of like small guy, 10 to 12 touches. Tyjae Spears also on that spectrum as well. But just guys that should be added, speculative adds. He had 8 for 25 on the ground. He had 3 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown through the air. He had like 20 points on 11 touches in this game. Now, after that, we have a sneaky one. I don't know if he's going to be on waivers. He's like right on the fringe of 50% roster. We have Antonio Gibson. And we have no info at all on Brian Robinson. All we really have right now is Rivera saying he's expected to practice. I searched far and wide when I made this outline trying to see, what's going on with Brian Robinson. I couldn't find a damn thing, to be honest with you. So, hamstring injuries usually linger. They're usually not great for any of these skill position players. They linger. We've seen it with Aaron Jones all year. We've seen it with Christian Watson all year. It's, again, one of these gambles. I can't say for pure certainty whether or not Brian Robinson plays, but if he doesn't play, Antonio Gibson, with just his explosiveness, what he can do between the tackles, what he can do in the passing game, is just like an all-purpose 3-down running back in this Eric Bieniemy offense that has been so good in terms of just queuing up Brian Robinson Jr. Gibson would have like RB1 upside down the stretch here if Brian Robinson did miss any time. So something to definitely monitor. And if he's hanging out on waivers, I don't think that he's someone that people are going to be really sprinting to waivers to go get, but he is somebody you should scoop. Now, moving on from the running backs, we have a few wide receivers I wanted to touch on. Odell Beckham, he's another one of these guys, like very much on the fringe of 50% owned, but still someone I wanted to talk about. We touched on him yesterday, but he's just having a resurgence here where over the last 3 weeks, he has hit 80 plus receiving grade in all three. The first time he's done it this entire season, but he's strung 3 in a row, which is absolutely massive. On top of that, these last 5 weeks, weeks 9 through 14, has been absolutely amazing. He's only running 60% of the routes here. That's what he ran last week, 57%. But the targets per out run has been amazing. He's been at 28% or better target per out run in 4 of those 5 games. On top of that, he's been a top 24 wide receiver in points per game since week 9 with 13.5 points per game. That's all really good. It feels like there's some meat on the bone as well if he gets the route percentage up to 80% plus. There's a lot to like here. He's having a bit of a resurgence as well if you look on PFF. This is his first season over 2 yards per out run since 2018, man. So absolutely crazy. OBJ, someone if he's hanging out there on waivers, which I imagine some people really dropped him. I think I've dropped him in high stakes leagues that are like 20 rounds deep, or I've seen people drop him on those teams. So he could certainly be available. Next up, we have Zay Jones, someone we've been talking about early on in the season, but I kind of gave up on him. But the Christian Kirk injury sort of opened up, creaked open the door for him to come in here and have a meaningful fantasy season. I was going to mention him last week, but because of the Trevor Lawrence uncertainty, I was like, why do we want the third pass catcher attached to CJ Beathard? But Trevor Lawrence is a bionic human. He comes back, he plays. He's not fine, but he's going to be fine, I guess. And with Christian Kirk out for a while, this is a snap count table from PFF, and you can see Zay Jones had 14 targets. Now, he didn't really turn it into a big fantasy day, but if he's going to come out here and run 50-plus routes on 56 dropbacks, and he's going to have 10-plus targets, that's somebody that absolutely needs to be rostered in fantasy. So as a top 3 option in this passing game, it's much more consolidated without Christian Kirk as well. Zay Jones becomes somebody you can absolutely roster and flex when you need to. Our 9th must-add waiver wire targets. We have 2 here, a little 2-for-1 special. We have Noah Brown and we have Robert Woods. So, I mean, it sucks, man. I don't know if you want to blame it on MetLife turf, whatever. I'm more than willing to take that on. But it sucks, dude. It's like CJ Stroud got a concussion off of the really tough turf. You have Nico Collins come up with an injury here where Dr. Jesse Morris touches on it. You have Nico Collins with a calf injury, huge re-injury risk, unlikely to play in Week 15, return Week 16, Week 17. So Dalton Schultz dealing with injury, Tank Dell out for the season, Nico Collins dealing with injury. So it's really next man up on an offense that's taking a big hit efficiency-wise, but you also still most likely, we don't know in Week 15, but most likely have CJ Stroud back by Week 16. You want pieces in this offense as long as CJ Stroud is playing at quarterback, and the next 2 guys up are Noah Brown and Robert Woods. You can see here, this is the PFF snap counts. Robert Woods, 28 routes run to Noah Brown's 27 routes run. They ran, the first and second most routes on this team, along with Noah Brown leading the team with 6 targets. Now, what I will say, I guess Xavier Hutchinson is kind of interesting as a rookie. He's a slot rookie. Played a lot of snaps, but he didn't run a lot of routes. So I guess maybe they like him as a blocker. Maybe they just like him as a slot look on some of these plays. I'm not quite sure what that's about. You could sell me on his rookie upside, but I would probably prefer Robert Woods and Noah Brown first when it comes to kind of just the Houston situation altogether, with Noah Brown as my priority. And then the last guy we'll talk about is Demario Douglas. He's been a rookie wide receiver report darling here. Really good yards per out run, really good targets per out run, really good PFF grade. He's been somebody that has had 10 or more PPR points in 4 of his last 5 games. He's just missed the last 2 games with a concussion. So he's another one of these guys. We don't know what his status is going to be for this weekend. You put in a little bid, you get him, you sneak him onto the end of your roster. If he plays this week and, gets out of concussion protocol, you throw him in the lineup. If not, you stash him for another week. He's a nice flex option you kind of just put in there in a pinch. Now, that is going to do it for us today. I appreciate everyone out here that's watching. It is, we are deep. We are in the dog days of the season. It is Week 15 of the fantasy football season. I imagine if you're watching again, you are probably in the playoffs, so shout out to you. Big respect. I do appreciate all of you guys sort of, watching along, tagging along here. We'll definitely have waivers this week, next week, Week 17 for the championship week. We'll have content all the way throughout. I think the plan is tomorrow. I know I said last week I was going to give you guys a 2024 rookies video. I ended up kind of updating the spreadsheets last week, and that took me so long that I'm just going to push it to this week. So I think tomorrow, I would say probably Thursday morning-ish, by Thursday lunchtime, you guys will have a 2024 rookie video for all the dynasty heads out there watching these videos. That should be a really fun one. So with all that being said, if you enjoyed, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see y'all in the next one.
like this froze. Wait, ice cold.